Class 315 saw active service on the Great Eastern Main Line for over 40 years from 1980 up to December 2022. In this train sim scenario, I'm going to take a daytime run from London Liverpool Street to Shenfield, and at the same time have a first look on the channel at the upgraded Gemma route from ATS. This includes better scenery, more modern looking catenary and so much more. So hello, welcome to London Liverpool Street, and without further ado, let's get this Class 315 set up. So we need to set our train to Shenfield, so that's treble 019, so our passengers know where exactly we're going. That's good. Well, we might as well open the doors at this point so we can hopefully get an on-time departure. Now the GSMR needs to be set as well, so we are 2 whiskey zero 2, and then I do know the signal is 051, so that should do us. There we go. And then the headlights we need to set to marker lights. Strangely, it's shift and H rather than H. Never quite understood that. And as we have got a green signal ahead of us, then we'll set that DSD to off, and with all that we should be just about good to go in a few seconds time. 14:10 the scheduled departure time. Slight relief to get it moving, because I've had a slight bit of problems with the power brake controller this morning. Didn't want to play ball first time around. I know that we are still a little bit problematic in this Liverpool Street area. I think ATS, Alan Thompson Simulation, are planning eventually to release a new version of Liverpool Street, but of course that's a massive project. But other than that, I have to say this new Gemma line is working a treat. Too carried away with the speed. It is 30 miles an hour in the early stages. the most exciting looking trains in the world, has to be said. But there's just something about these slightly older units, and much as I can quite enjoy doing a scenario with a rail tour type of train, I think it's quite nice doing an everyday run-of-the-mill sort of service like this, which ferry commuters back and forth by, well, the millions really over a period of time. This is set, this particular scenario, about 2018, so as we're starting to see class 3, 4, 5 Aventras, we won't see them in this run, but the good news is that there is an AI version of the Aventra coming out quite soon. That's mainly why I've held off buying the Flirt. This is probably the fastest bit of the run actually, this little section between London Liverpool Street and Stratford. Such an enclosed little section. Great to see the new catenary as well. Feels like almost a completely new route. I think all the signalling's been done as well, or redone. It would be nice to have the extension to Norwich, but I've still got the old one, the one that is no longer available on the Steam Workshop, unfortunately, but keep me going for a while. Some better use of clutter added in just to give it just a bit more of a realistic feel, like some modern looking flats there for example. It's a bit slightly stuttery, but then there is a lot to load in with the approach to Stratford. In a bit fast perhaps, but it is pretty long platform and this thing is pretty good for braking, so I think we'll be about perfect. Got a freight line. I've got a suspicion, you know, that there's a couple of Class 86s on the fronts, there you are. Different Freightliner liveries as well, now that's good. And that's always something a good scenario writer can do, just creates these little bit of perfectly realistic situations, but just adds a little bit of value to it with things going on as you're at some of these busy stops. So Maryland is our next stop, and it's very shortly after Stratford. Now, there was always a massive problem with this signal in the original game. Not totally sure it's completely fixed, because we had a marker there telling us we were off to the left, and of course we aren't. But at least we've got a green. We always used to get a red in the original route. It's such a busy route, the Great Eastern Main Line. Such a lot going on always, and bear in mind this is a sort of a mid-afternoon service. And although we won't be able to drive them, very much looking forward to being able to see the AI 345s and the Aventras on the overground and the Greater Anglia ones as well. That really will make me want to buy the Flirt. Forest Gate next. Strange units sometimes. It feels entirely realistic, but sometimes you could go into power and you'd get no response. Loving the detail on the catenary. And of course, talking about the Aventras, there's always the hope as well that Dovetail Games might release an Aventra 4 Train Sim Classic, because oh, just got something missing there. We've got a freight train there without an engine on the front. We must have the geos missing. But yeah, it'd be good if they could release the Goblin Line Aventra 4 Train Sim Classic, and maybe that's something that would happen. It certainly happened with units before. Got the Elizabeth Line roundels. And of course, round about this time, the 345s were in operation, but between Liverpool Street and Shenfield, they didn't use the new tunnel bits. Manor Park is next. I think once we have got the AI Aventras to use, I think we're going to see an absolute shed load of scenarios coming out for this route. Really deserves it. Always personally had a fascination with the route since it came out for Microsoft Train Simulator many years ago now, with originally Liverpool Street to Ipswich, and really that was a great add-on, massive bargain. Yeah, I like the new steps you could see added in there with the yellow handles going up. I'm sure that wasn't in the original game. Had to download a patch from somewhere, branding patch, to put in those TFL rail logos. Glad to see as well, I think with this scenario, that there are no timings, because we do have a timing thing at Shenfield, so there is a time factor. But I think unless you're a real driver, it's kind of one of those where you've got to know the exact braking points of every stop. That's quite difficult. So we're going to cross the flyover now, just before Ilford station. So 40 mile an hour across here, and then the slow lines cross over to the left hand side. You've kind of got the flies on the front there. It's not completely clean, which would be very realistic. One flyover to another. We've got the busy road going over our heads. I think there was a platform removed from the original game to represent the current Ilford station. Can't see much going on there, can we? That's better. Yeah, tremendous lot of work's gone in to upgrading this route, and apart from anything else, just making it a bit more frame rate friendly, because the original one crashed the game so often. Very busy freight route as well, from the likes of Felixstowe and Harwich as well. And of course they can cross down the Great Eastern Main Line, then go across the North London Line before going north up the West Coast Main Line. And we've got some new buildings at Ilford as well. Yeah, it's just one of these with the braking. You're just not trying to shoot yourself in the foot and not be able to get there in time, but you don't want to brake too early either. So I'll be interested to see how far away I am from the scheduled arrival time at Shenfield. I don't reckon I'll be perfect by any stretch of the imagination. One of the 360 units, that was the EMU that came with the add-on originally. I love the old canopies that they have on the Great Eastern Main Line. Yeah, I think the problem is sometimes I'm trying to get into acceleration before the doors have shut properly, and of course until the interlocking takes effect then you can't apply power and move away. But yeah, some of them canopies you could just imagine looking back to steam days. Another 360. Just seems to be just something going on every second. There's that station building different there. I don't remember it being like that. Perhaps it's just me. Perhaps I've just never noticed before, but fascinating architecture sometimes in the railways in this country. Probably going to be more likely to miss the schedule because of looking around at one or two bits and pieces. I really don't know the line well enough to make the statements whether there's any glaring errors that are missing. It's always fascinating when people who know the line really well make comments. That's always nice to hear from, because they know what's right and what isn't. Again, it makes sense that the stop markers by the steps going down from the bridge. Just feels as though wherever you are, there's always another train in the vicinity. Sadly, the 321s, I think, pretty much not seen on this route now. Such is the passage of time, I can remember not quite so much the 321s, although I do remember them being used at Birmingham New Street on the Birmingham to London Euston stoppers. But trains like that, the 323s, which were very much in use in the northern area, I remember them being brand new and replacing the 304s and the 310s. And of course on the Great Eastern Main Line, the 312s as well used to be heavily in use. I don't really remember the 306s. It's a little bit too far back for me. So, Romford, the next stop. Kind of start getting towards this stage in the journey where the stops are a little bit more spaced out as we get a little bit more countrified. Of the journey, we've not been able to get up to line speed. I think at Romford you can change for services to Upminster. We do have an old add-on freeware one that was created many years ago, which did have the Upminster branch as well as the line to Southend. If it's still downloadable, but it's looking a bit dated now. And again, I'm kind of saying that in the context of somebody who knows that to build these routes at all just takes forever and a day. Always been a very heavily used service, this Liverpool Street to Shenfield. The Class 90 and the Mark III and DVT set on the Express Norwich to Liverpool Street runs. Gidea Park next, and of course some of the peak time services actually terminate at Gidea Park. A 315 on an Upminster working there. That's the little bay platform that takes us into that. That's the problem sometimes, trying to look on the outside view. Well, we're definitely going to be late now. Just had one of those situations where I was showing the outside view, and of course we don't get the AWS sound from the outside, and that meant a right old hassle trying to get the brakes to release. So I thought, well, as I've reached so far in the route, I'd like to try and get to the end of the run. To watch out for those AWS markers. I prefer it the ones where you can hear it from the outside. But of course that's a bit difficult because it's then, well, are you going to hear them on the outside on every train? You don't want to hear that on AI trains passing. So we're definitely not going to get a tick at the end of it, but never mind. This is Gidea Park. I know there's been a lot of work in terms of extending the platforms as well, so that they can accommodate the longer trains. I think the Elizabeth line ones usually run as 9 cars. Still don't totally know what I did to actually reset it and get it moving again, because the brakes were quite stubborn in terms of releasing. I still haven't quite got the hang of resetting this thing. This is something I remember from the Microsoft Train Sim days. It seems a bit weird because you almost feel as though you're going through the yard at Gidea Park. Glad that one of these units has been preserved. Of course, we don't have a heritage line with overhead wiring, so it's kind of one of those where if they're ever run on a heritage line, it'll be with a diesel hauling them, but hopefully we can keep them going and we can have them in service on the main line again at some point for special rail tours and the like. We've got a neutral section coming up. Works for the Armstrong Powerhouse 315 as far as I remember anyway. Certainly didn't hear the pop of the motors dipping. Again, you just imagine a country branch line station in the 50s. Sort of canopies. Again, this would have been pretty much where the platform ended in the original version. This is Harold Wood. Quite nice to see buildings going back a long way. It kind of gives a bit of depth to it without going overboard. So Brentwood next. I think it's just Brentwood and Shenfield. Brentwood, of course, not to be confused with Brentford, which is kind of nearer to Heathrow Airport. My eye out for those AWS ramps. I think we're alright in a minute. I hope. A little bit of a climb up to Brentwood and then Shenfield. That's kind of why we're slowly accelerating, really, because of the climb. I mean, they are pretty decent accelerators, but not massively used to going long distances at speed. They're more about accelerating away and then pretty short distances between the stops. interesting that even at kind of full power this climb we haven't been able to maintain or get up to full line speed. Again, presumably in steam days it was a right old complication. I'm sure you'd be losing speed quite dramatically on these big climbs. Yeah, I think we should be just about arriving into Shenfield now. And we are going to be a tad late. Imagine in days gone by that 4-car services were fairly common, but not in modern day London. Kind of get the feeling the way the line widened out there in the middle that there was another track in place at one time, or maybe another platform perhaps. That's what's great about the internet though nowadays, and generally have a quick look on Wiki, and all these little questions, little things that you spot here and there, you can actually look up and find out a tiny bit of history. So Shenfield is our final stop now. So apologies to passengers for the late running. I'm blaming the fact that I was looking on the outside. I couldn't have known about that AWS ramp. We do have 15 miles an hour speed restriction coming up as we come into Shenfield itself, but I've got a bit of time to go for that. So the upgraded Gemma route is available on Alan Thompson simulation. You need the original Liverpool Street to Ipswich route from Dovetail Games, one or two other add-ons as well, which if you've been playing the game for a long time you've probably got. The scenario itself is from Alan Thompson simulation, ATS. You don't need to be a paid subscriber to get a lot of these scenarios, although I think you have to be a paid subscriber to get this particular route. See, this is where it lets you down sometimes with these indications on the HUD at the bottom, because you kind of assume that the 15 mile an hour is a lot further on than it is. Well, that's kind of the way it's indicated there as well, so I don't know if that's a slight error in some way. Might have been though, as we had to cross the points. Busy commuter town of Shenfield. And we do have a terminus platform. I didn't realise actually, I kind of assumed all the platforms at Shenfield hadn't got a terminus. I thought they got the through running on them. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the run. Let's get our doors open here at Shenfield. So probably the one on the left there is the next service to be heading down back to Liverpool Street, and then this one will head back down probably in about half an hour's time. So that's it from another Train Sim Classic run, and from me, until the next time, it's goodbye.